On December 16th, 1941, 7 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Imperial Japanese Navy commissioned what even today is the most impressive and well-equipped battleship in history. The Yamato. The Yamato's clone and sister ship, the Imperial Navy's Musashi, was commissioned just less than a year later, on August the 5th, 1942. These two ships were the pride and joy of a Japanese Navy completely bent on utter domination of the Pacific. And, much like the Japanese imperialism itself, neither would survive the war. The Yamato-class battleships were equipped with the largest naval guns in history. They boasted 9 18.1-inch guns, each gun being almost 70 feet long. These monstrosities were able to fire the 18-inch shells over 26 miles. The shells themselves weighing about 1,460 kilograms, which is equivalent to about 3,218 pounds. That's more than your average four-door sedan. The Yamato's main turrets, which you can see here, housed 3 of these massive, massive guns. The maximum weight of one of these turrets was 2,774 metric tons. It's about as heavy as a large destroyer. The weaponry didn't stop there, though. When it was sunk in 1945, the Yamato, in addition to the 9 18.1-inch guns, had 6 6.1-inch guns, 24 5-inch guns, 162 25mm anti-aircraft weapons, and 4 13.2mm anti-aircraft. The Yamato-class battleships were also able to hold 7 aircraft of their own. These float planes, like the F-1M2 or Pete, and the E-13A1 or Jake, were launched by an aircraft catapult and retrieved by a crane, both located at the rear of the vessel. When all was said and done, the Yamato displaced 72,800 tons and sat at 862.5 feet long, almost the length of 3 football fields. When fully operational, her complement, or the number of men on board, would exceed 2,700. Yet despite its size and impressive array of weapons, the Yamato itself saw very little action throughout the course of World War II. The Japanese Navy, spearheaded by this man, Isoroku Yamamoto, appeared to have preferred to keep the Yamato and Musashi out of harm's way as much as possible. While it did see some action during its lifespan before it was sunk in 1945, a majority of the Yamato's time was spent in and around the Caroline Islands. It was even given the nickname Hotel Yamato by Japanese sailors who would come and go while the Yamato still sat in port. While I would venture to say that at least part of this was due to Japanese cautiousness, I think a lot of it also had to do with the fact that it was becoming more and more clear that the battleship itself was becoming obsolete. With every battle of World War II fought in the Pacific, air power continued to show its dominance. The days in which the size and firepower of your surface fleet determined the effectiveness of your navy were numbered. The Japanese weren't oblivious to this fact either. Admiral Yamamoto was a very vocal advocate for the influence of air power, even as early as 1928. The Yamato's eventual demise would take place in April of 1945. On the 1st of that month, Allied forces, spearheaded of course by the United States, but with assistance from the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, invaded the small island of Okinawa. Okinawa was to be the launching point for the eventual invasion of mainland Japan. Knowing the consequences were dire if Okinawa were to fall to the Allies, Japan organized Operation Tengo. Operation Tengo was a massive, last-ditch effort by the Japanese in order to save Okinawa from Allied control. More specifically, it was a suicide run concocted by the Japanese Navy in order to utilize the Yamato and its task force in an effort to beach themselves on the island of Okinawa. At this point in the war, the task force consisted of the Yamato and 9 other warships, 8 of which were small tin can destroyers. With the exception of a handful of kamikaze pilots, air cover was practically non-existent on the mission, a fact which would prove fatal for the world's largest battleship. On April 6, 1945, the Yamato and its suicidal escorts set sail towards Okinawa, equipped with only enough fuel for a one-way trip. Unfortunately for the Japanese, that same day, Allied aircraft and submarines spotted the task force. On April 7, 1945, the last major sea battle of World War II took place.